Well, howdy, and welcome back to the Single Malt Review, or so we told you, under clearly false pretenses. What have you done, Dave?
How'd you look at that label? Have you ever seen anything more appallingly, tragically 80s? Hell, I was born in the 1980s, and this is just some awful 1980s-ness here. The bright yellows, the harsh green, the clunky angular red font. This is Mellow corn, and there is no known cure. What we have here, from Kentucky, Heartland of Bourbon territory, is a 50% ABV straight corn whiskey. Essentially bourbon, but made with 80+% of corn, at least 4/5 pure maize, aged for 4 years in a government bonded supervised warehouse, which apparently you were telling me there's all kinds of perhaps quality controls or tax
Not
incentives.
so much quality controls, more like actual controls on things moving in or out. It's all about tax, as so many things are and are not in America. So, as you say, startling bottle, very rustic. One could say slightly corny, but never mind. And yes, corn whiskey apparently coming into fashion in some of the more hip, we should know, areas in the US, San Francisco and the like, and pretty much just a really, really corn-heavy bourbon, and that's about all I know about it. So this will be a new, hopefully not too startling experience for me trying this one, and we'll just have to see what's going on.
Now, you're saying 100% corn whiskey is impossible due to reasons of science, so this is the next best thing, at least 80% corn.
Well, a 99% corn whiskey would be just possible, because of course you need that malted barley in there for the amylase enzyme, otherwise it just wouldn't done ferment, as they'd say in Kentucky, but of course you could do 100%, you just have to use the synthetic amylase. Invented in America, in fact, although by a Japanese professor doing some work over there. I forget exactly when that was. It was a long time ago. Not used particularly often because it's a rather expensive process, but you can, in fact, ferment any sort of starch you want with that without malted barley. But it turns out it's just a wee bit cheaper to throw some malted barley in. So there you go. Nature provides. Now, this smells a bit hinky.
And get a lot of tortilla chips and a little bit of popcorn.
It's corny and not in the way I was expecting. I was going to be expecting something really heavily vanilla, really heavy, kind of a very bourbony, buttery. Because it's the very sweet, it's the very sort of smooth, simple sweet flavours that come from the corn in bourbon. That's why wheat-dominant bourbons, things like that, are sort of a bit different, a bit drier than standard high corn content bourbons. But this one does actually smell of, as you say, like cooking corn, like some sort of tortillas going on, or something like that. There's a wee bit of like hot electronics as well. It's got a little bit of a smell of, like, I need to turn my computer off immediately, is how I describe it. I think this is, we should say, a pretty vintage bottle of Mellow corn. It's been kind of sitting at that level for a number of years, at least. Goodness knows how far it got down there. I don't remember drinking it, but it might have been one of those evenings.
Mellow corn has its uses. I'll go into some of the applications of this liquor later, but
we may not be tasting this Mellow corn at its illustrious best.
Yeah, it's nice and it's fresh, vibrant. So
we'll give that proviso anyway. So anyway, that's a bit of a difficult nose. Struggling electronics, cooked corn, and there is vanilla there. There is this normal oaked character that you would expect. So I shouldn't sell it short there. It has been aged for 4 years after all.
It's got a bit of a bite to it. There's more of those intense savoury corn flavours. It's 100% 100 proof or 50% ABV, so it's not weak, but it's still smooth and drinkable, surprisingly, despite all that. A bit of cornflakes and a slight nip on the end of the tongue.
It's warming, you'd say, very warming. I'm just sort of on the tail end of a cold here, but certainly clears the throat. But Not a complex whiskey, you would say. A very primary whiskey, which is maybe unsurprising given the primary nature of its ingredients. But it's not as bad. It's not as bad as maybe its label suggests. I think it's maybe done a bit of a disservice by its packaging. But
they haven't updated their labelling in a very long time, so possibly that's because they haven't needed to, because the product has stayed consistent.
Well, I'm not sure the drinkers of Mellow corn have been updated in some time either, so possibly there's smart decisions were made there. But that said, it is apparently becoming a bit of a hipster thing in San Francisco, so you never know, we may get the new improved, or maybe they like it kitschy, who knows. Funny place, San Fran.
There are some impressive wheat and triticale and goodness knows what else whiskies coming out of some of the micro craft distillers in various bits of the US.
Which we should not imply this comes out of Heaven Hill Distillery, which is must be the distillery the size of a city these days. A great many things come out of Heaven Hill. Whew. It helped by the water, I think. That spreads the taste out a wee bit.
The water for me brought out some flavours of wet cardboard and old paperwork, not necessarily good things.
I was going to say wet carpet. So there you go. We were close.
It's moist and dank and fibrous, then this whiskey or taste of it. There's a recommendation.
It doesn't
there was one.
Taste quite 50% either. I think the problem may be that it's been sitting at a low level for so long with all that headroom. It's why we recommend you don't do that, because that means every time you take the lid off, you lose sort of this much, this much evaporated alcohol, and it can actually start really impacting the your last little bit of whiskey. So
into critically low territory now.
It's not that you can't keep almost empty bottles for as long as you want. You just shouldn't open the lid too often. You shouldn't take little pecks out of them here and there, otherwise you will lose increasingly more of their alcohol percentage every time, because that'll fill up to sort of air saturation point every time it sits on the shelf, and then you'll lose that every time you take the cap off, so you might be losing close to a percentage every time. Once it gets really low, it all becomes a bit exponential.
It's an impressively oily whiskey. There's so much residue sticking inside that glass, it's smeared with it.
Corn is quite a high protein grain, especially compared to wheat and compared to barley. Barley is pretty high protein, but corn, I think, is even more so. So there will be quite a lot of oiliness, quite a lot of weight and heft in this whiskey. I'll say, all up, I was expecting something a lot more basic and a lot harsher, certainly. This is, as it says, it's fairly mellow corn. It is not unsmooth. There are smoother liquors out there. That's for damn sure. But no, it's a fairly pleasant surprise.
It's not a sophisticated savouring experience, but it's also not a harsh throat-burning rot gut from the back end of Beyond. It's straightforward. It's
I bet it's pretty cheap as well. So in the budget category,
for a 4-year-old American whiskey, it's surprisingly accessible.
Not too bad.
It's actually, I've got to mention, it's surprisingly versatile, good for various mixes. In fact, if you want to make a hot chocolate a little more hot, my lovely wife insists this is the best way to go. Adding a proper whiskey, say Scotch or a good bourbon, to hot chocolate, no, the flavours just don't gel so well. They can be too sweet. This stuff, though, will enhance hot chocolate into a enjoyable alcoholic beverage without creating too much of a flavour clash.
Well, no, I was never really into the old Irish coffee thing myself, but I'll have to give it a whirl sometime. Scores for this one. I guess we'll put it into the American whiskey category, really. Close enough. We're certainly not going to have a corn whiskey category. I don't think it'll be a wee while since we till we encounter another one of these, if ever. But good grief, this could be a bit of a shot in the dark, really. But I'm going to give this one a 76, I think. Which, all things considered, it could be a lot worse. It's what I expected it to be. I thought I'd be in maybe 50 to 60 territory, just purely by the look of the bottle and the connotations therein. But no, that'll be my one. What do you think?
This one merits a 70 from me. I've had some infinitely superior American whiskies. It gets points for being so. It's kind of single-minded. It's clear. It has one purpose in life, and it's fulfilled that purpose with a certain amount of admirable grit and determination. Yeah, 70%. It's not a masterpiece, but it's never ever going to try to present itself as a masterpiece, as you can tell by the appalling label and the beige screw cap. And yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Don't say we don't review a diverse range of products here. Equal opportunity, that's what we are. If you've got any corn whiskies which we might have overlooked, or indeed if you know of another corn whisky, because I really don't actually, but I have heard they are catching in some of the more trendy areas for some reason, certainly let us know. And on the off chance that you can actually get it down here, then we will. I won't rule out going to take a look. I'll say that much. But anyway, this has been the single malt review once again. We will be back with something equally, if not more exciting, very, very shortly. So check back in there. Keep safe. Sludger.